there. Welcome to the Aspect Podcast Network, the home of Bending the Narrative. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button below and be the first to listen to our new episodes and other shows from the Aspect, covering topics such as Marvel, Star Wars, Game of Thrones, and more. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bending the Narrative here on the Aspect Network. I'm one of your hosts, Kate Kroonquist, and joining me every week to discuss the latest and greatest in the world of Avatar is Alex Batts. Alex, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited to get into things this week. We have a pretty iconic episode here. So this week we're continuing our book 2 rewatch with the episode The Blind Bandit.
Yes. Now let's continue tracking Team Avatar and Zuko and Iroh's separate journeys on our handy dandy little world map here. We're not tracking Zuko and Iroh's right
they're
now.
just straight up not even in this episode. So, which I think it's super interesting that they've done that a couple times now this season, and I think that starts to be a real theme with the show going forward. That like they're giving each of the threads more time to breathe in like individual episodes. But yeah, so the gang has moved northeast a little bit. They actually traveled a pretty decent amount here, and they're going like more into the Earth Kingdom. Also, like this episode started with the previously on, which
this is the first or one of the only episodes to do that.
Yeah, they're like, hey, by the way, this is the big plot point that we're picking up in this episode, which I think is important because like the last couple of weeks we've been talking about how they're just kind of traveling around and there doesn't seem to be a like necessary like rhyme or reason to it. So yeah,
they're like making little stops.
Yeah, they're just like hanging around and going around the world, which is cool.
Around.
So yeah, they move a little bit to the city of Gaoling. So this is where we've got Master Yu's Earthbending Academy, and then also the Earth Rumble Stadium and the Beifong Estate. Good. There's so many things in this small little like area.
Fun city.
Yeah. So it's, on the outskirts of the
LA.
It's the LA of the Earth Kingdom. The Beverly Hills. We've got the Beifong Estate. So yeah, they traveled like more into the Earth Kingdom, closer to the Singwang Desert, kind of. They're on like the outskirts of it now, making more progress as Aang is trying to find an earthbending teacher and get that under his belt. So good. So yeah, this episode, book 2, episode 6, is directed by Ethan Spalding and written by Michael Dante DiMartino. And if you're just joining us, we will be discussing the show in its totality. So, of course, be warned about spoilers. So, leading into the episode and let's see how fast I can run down this plot. Again, we start with a recap, which is super interesting. So we know that Aang needs to find an earthbending teacher. They come across this earthbending academy. He tries to do stuff there, but everyone there is kind of basically incompetent and not really actually like teaching anything. And they end up hearing about Earth Rumble 6, this is just totally like it's WrestleMania / the Royal Rumble from WWE.
It's a big spoof on that. I also love how the earthbending class is like a spoof on those strip mall kung fu classes that are just a rip off.
Yeah, it's just like the most generic, like stereotypical thing, which is hilarious. So they end up finding the location of the Earth Rumble Stadium, and they go in, they get their front row seats, which I love the bit about they're like, wow, I wonder why no one's like sitting up here, and then a boulder flies and almost just takes them out. It's incredible. So yeah, this whole bit is just like, it's a wrestling event, and they even have like the style of combat that they do where like you're trying to knock the person out of the area and like you win. Like that's just straight up the Royal Rumble match from WWE. Like it's the same thing, which is hilarious to me. Like I love that. I'm a huge wrestling nerd, by the way.
I was gonna say, I was like, haven't watched any. I gotta watch more of that.
It's like this is such a direct rip on like just combining a couple of the things, and then even with the Boulder, who is a spoof on The Rock, like it's so.
And his voice actor is a WrestleMania wrestler.
Really?
Mike Foley. I will fact check.
It's Mick Foley, right?
Mick Foley, yes.
Yeah, Mick Foley, who is a very famous wrestler. He is Mankind or Cactus Jack or Dude Love,
Mhm.
depending on his personality at the time. Oh, a legend. Love him.
Which is so fun.
Um,
But I heard they tried to get The Rock
I'm sure they
to
tried to
play
get
the
The Rock,
role.
and he was like, no, because he's got a gigantic ego and probably wanted way too much money.
Yep.
But Mick
We're
Foley's
not holding
super
back
chill.
here.
But Mick Foley's super chill, and he did it. Which actually, ironically, they had a big feud for a while. And anyway, this is not a wrestling podcast.
Oh, a whole
It's not. We
side
don't need to
plot.
get into that. So yeah, we get in there. It's the whole like wrestling bit. The Boulder's a big like crowd favorite, which is super funny. We're introduced to the Blind Bandit, who is the reigning champ, who is this little blind girl, and she just absolutely wrecks the Boulder and like zero moves flat, just takes him out.
So good.
Um, which is great. Aang recognizes her laugh first, and then like notices that it's the same face, and her also being blind. That it's the girl that he had seen in his vision from the swamp, and so he's like, "Oh, I think that I need to like have her teach me." And so he will then go up and is like, "I'll face her," and beats her. But then she runs away, and he's like, "No, please, like I need help." And she's like, "Nah, get out of here." And they end up tracking her down, and they find her and ask for help, and she's refusing at first. We learn that she is Toph Beifong, the daughter of the Beifong family, who are ridiculously rich. And she's just super like ultra sheltered. Her parents just don't trust that she can do anything for herself because of her being blind, and so they're just super overprotective and coddle her and don't let her do anything. So we find that out. Toph also explains to Aang that she sees earthbending through her feet. Like she's like, yeah, I'm blind, but I can see the world through earthbending, which is a super cool thing. And the way that they visualize this is also awesome. It reminds me a lot of the
Pretty cool,
like
isn't it?
Daredevil sense that you'll get like both in comics and like in
Oh,
other
yeah.
stuff where it's like just a different, I don't know, you see like sound waves kind of, or
Yeah,
the
it's like
different.
I was gonna say seismic waves, but yeah, the sound
The
waves.
seismic, it is definitely like seismic waves in this, but it's that kind
Yeah.
of like visual cue of like having the world be like almost like two tone and then like a wave of
Mhm.
something across it. It's a really cool visual, and definitely like gets across the emphasis that she does see the world just in a different way. Um,
Mhm.
so that's cool. But then Aang and Toph both get captured by the Earth Rumble hosts, who are Shinfu and the Boulder, because they think that they were plotting to screw them out of money because they put a bunch of money on these fights, of course, because it's also like the spoof on like a gambling and like fighting ring and like all of that stuff being like fixed and whatnot. So they get captured. And then we eventually get Toph fighting all of the captors, and she just is bodying everyone. Like it's not even remotely close.
She's like, I
And
don't even need help.
yeah, just
I'm gonna wipe
like
the floor with
they're
them myself.
yeah, like they're Sokka's trying to like break Aang out of the thing, and Toph is just wrecking everyone. And one of the best like action sequences in the show, honestly. Um, so she's just wrecking people left and right while her dad is watching also, and he's like, "Oh my god!" And his little assistant dude is like, "Oh, she's like the best Earthbender I've ever seen," um,
Yes.
which is so accurate. She is, and
Yeah,
so like
hands down.
she ends up getting back home, and the dad learns all the wrong lessons about it. Like she's telling him, I am capable, like I love earthbending, I'm really good at it, obviously, like you need to let me have freedom. And he's like, nah, actually realize that we need to put you like even more under lock and key, and you need to be like on guard 24/7 and all of this stuff. And he sends the Avatar and the gang away. And then at the very end, though, Toph ends up running away, and she goes to the gang, and they're like, "Hey, what happened?" And she's like, "Oh, my dad changed his mind. I get to go with you now," which is a total lie.
Lie.
she
Yeah,
she
we all
just
know she just ran away.
yeah, she just ran away, and her dad just straight up puts out a bounty on her and the gang.
Yeah.
Essentially, like it's super messed up. Honestly, the fact that he's like
Like, oh,
doing this, like it's just not great. But that's how the episode ends, with her dad putting out a bounty to get the gang and his daughter back. So yeah, that's like those are the big points, the big things as we go through. But yeah, it's a super pivotal episode. Like, what do you think of
huge.
this one overall? What are your kind of like main thoughts about it?
I obviously love this episode. It's going to be, we were talking about this before. We were saying, how are we going to talk about this episode without constantly saying we just love it
It's
so
just so
much?
good. Yeah, like it's
It's
just
just
great.
so good. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. What else could you
Mhm.
say? But what I love about this is it is a good turning point in the show. This is where we bring in one of the characters that really solidifies this show, I think, as
Mhm.
great as it is, as fantastic as it is, Didn't
Yeah.
this also win an Annie Award? I think this is that episode that won
Probably for its one
for
of the
its
points that
animation.
I was gonna. That's not even what I was gonna say, or what I thought the award would have been for. Yeah, the animation in this one is ridiculous. Like you could tell that
Fantastic. They leveled up
they knew
image.
they were cooking with this one. Like all of this,
They were
like
cooking.
all of the slow mo shots with Toph and like the focus on her and how her bending works and everything. Like they knew that they had something here, and they really like honed in on it and
Oh yeah.
wanted to make it a presentation.
And
And you
that, like,
definitely
I
see
love
that.
that too. The visualization of how she sees and how they go about showing that
Hmm.
is so cool and so interesting. And it, I feel like it really helps keep viewers engaged, and it makes those fight scenes so unique and different.
Yeah.
I like the little slow mo, like Matrix almost bits where she
Hmm.
hears things and you see everybody else is watching in slow motion, but she's like how fast her timing is because she can see it, everything that we can't see. She sees better than everybody else.
It's also super interesting. She fights like obviously she's earthbending and using
Mhm.
those motions and moves, but her actual tactics while fighting are almost
Mm.
more in line with an airbender, and the fact that she's
Yeah.
mostly defensive. Like she doesn't attack. She waits for
Yeah.
someone else to, and like she's always just responding to what the other person is giving her because it's really difficult for her to be on the offensive first because she can't see traditionally. She has to
Mhm.
see in response to everyone else and the world around her. And so it really is a super unique fighting style for an earthbender. Like, obviously, she's doing the more like rigid and kind of like, of course, using the feet and planting and those types of moves with the
Mhm.
bending. But as far as her actual mindset in the combat, it's a really different thing, which I think is cool. And that also really hammers home the point that been making in this season where Aang knows that he needs to find someone who waits and listens. And
Mhm.
like you were saying with the slow mo, they do that in a really interesting way where they're able to slow it down, but then also speed it up instantly. Like you get the slow mo
Mhm.
and then almost like a speed ramp after that of seeing like her reaction to it, which is really cool.
And I do like that you brought up that she's more on the offensive, almost fighting like the Avatar or
Hmm.
like an Airbender. Because I love her little moves where she makes him do the split. Like she
So
just does things to stop them from fighting instead of totally knocking them out, except at the end when she's
just
quite
fed up.
literally knocking them out of the ring.
Yeah. Um,
And like
no,
she
it's
uses the dust to almost even the playing field.
yeah, because like that's not
She
gonna bother
blinds
her.
everybody
She's
else.
like, I can't
Yeah.
see
She's like, I
anyways.
can see. Doesn't fucking matter to me.
Yeah, I also loved the bit at the end, and it becomes a like a recurring bit in the show. But how like she can see you know somewhat, but then whenever Sokka just goes to drop the belt to her, he just drops it on her head because he like goes to drop it
You
over his
forget
head.
she's blind.
Yeah, like and that's just it's a super funny thing that they continuously do throughout the show as the seasons go on, where it's like, oh, like I like that they very much tackle head on the like her disability and what that means for her and her living.
Hmm.
I think that's definitely one of the most important things in this episode is that this is huge disability representation,
Hmm.
honestly. Like the fact that one of the core characters in the show is blind and she's also one of the most capable characters in the
Yeah.
entire universe, like in the history of Avatar. Like she is straight up known as the best earthbender to live.
Yes.
She invents metal bending. Like she is more than capable of handling herself. She runs away from home. Like even before she ran away from home, she was sneaking out to be part of this underground wrestling
Yeah.
fighting fight club ring, like
Fight Club ring.
and
Yeah.
was the champion of it. Like it's a really cool thing, and it's awesome that they do that. And also just the fact that I mean, we've been talking about it. We talked about it even briefly in book one and season one. Like
Hmm.
the fact that when you think about the show on the whole, like she's such an integral part of it, and the fact that she
But you
doesn't show,
forget she's not in it for
yeah, that
so
she's not
long.
there until I think this is the sixth episode of this season
Hmm.
of this book. Like the fact that she doesn't show up until not quite a third into the season, but like almost is wild. And so the fact that we get her this late, but she just makes such an immediate impact, and then also has such a big impact on everything going forward.
She leaves such a great impression. I also think it's so genius that everybody has heard the story, maybe not everybody, that originally the character was going to be a male, an older
Mhm.
male, like this huge, big, burly guy.
It's gonna be more
And
like the
so
Boulder,
the Boulder,
essentially.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
going to be somebody like the Boulder. And I just love whoever made that decision. Mwah, kiss on the cheek for you. Because that is the funniest thing ever, to make her a little girl who looks helpless. And she just has this like trucker attitude. I don't know how to describe it. This rough around the edges attitude.
Yeah.
And I think it's the funniest thing ever. I love how a lot of the comedy in the show does come from that, like subverting expectations. Like you get Sokka in the beginning too, with the belt matches the bag.
Oh, that's such a good bit too.
bit.
Whenever he's like, "I'm so glad I got this bag now," and I don't remember what he says, but Katara's like, says the one whose belt matches their bag. He's like, "Ah, damn, you got me there, I guess."
He got me there, and then you have Katara, who's like, "Oh, I'll go talk to these boys."
Yeah.
And she's the one who scares them away.
I love that they play that up as if it's like, oh, a girl's got her ways, and they play it up as if she like flirted with them and stuff, but then it hard cuts to them just being frozen to the walls. That is not at all what she did. Actually, she just intimidated and interrogated the hell out of them.
And I love, like, I feel like this is for the year that this came out in. I feel like that's very early for seeing women in these types of roles, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, especially in like, it's a Saturday morning kids show. Yeah, like it's not it's an impressive thing to see and an important thing to see in a show like this. Because then that also, like, you have to think about the audience who's watching it. Like, obviously now we're a lot older and we're doing rewatches of it, but like as it's airing, that a lot of your audience is going to be these kids, and so it's a good thing to show that to them and be like, hey, no, like this is.
Hey, girls can kick ass, girls can be crazy. Girls can be like tough. They can be tough.
I mean, yeah.
I love that she has this big man attitude.
She just doesn't take shit from anyone at all, ever. Like, she refuses to help Aang at first because she's like, no, you're just going to get in my way. And then she like does end up helping him, of course. But then, yeah, just her like standing up to him, standing up to obviously leveling everyone, all of the wrestlers and stuff, running away whenever she realizes that that's what would be better for her and what she actually wants to do. Is really great. And also, if you think about it, I mean, the boys in this episode are just entirely incompetent. Like, none of the boys really do anything. Like, Aang is able to beat her, in like their first encounter, but it's not really.
He's the Avatar.
Yeah, like Aang's always gonna have that like cheat card, but like he doesn't help in the final fight at all, really. And Sokka's not doing anything the whole episode. Like, he's just being a fanboy.
He's just being a fanboy. I love him yelling. They're like, what is it? Katara's like, this is just something that boys get to yell and scream at.
And he just
cut to Sokka, he's like, yeah.
Yeah, he just becomes the like rabid fan. He turns into the dude from Kyoshi Island, essentially, who like
the Kyoshi Island drilling guy.
Yeah, like,
and he's like, hit him harder.
It's just like instantly loses. I love also that he gets so into it that he just starts like booing Aang at one point. Like,
yes,
he's like booing. She's like, why are you booing
him? Talking. She's like, stop booing him. I love their dynamic in this episode too. It's so good. I love it. He's like, you know what? I'm glad I got the bag because it matches the belt. And she goes, she says something where she's like, oh, thank God. Like, oh, that's a relief.
The show is really by this point landed and settled into the type of comedy and dynamics that it has between all of the characters. Like, there's such a natural banter and feel between all of them. That it's so consistently funny, honestly. Like, it's great. All the bits are so good.
I think, what are some other good? There's another one that I wrote down that I loved. Oh, I think too, when they leave, when Katara interrogates the guys and they go to leave, and Sokka, as he's walking out, is like, water tribe.
Right. Yeah, he's just like, gotta be subtly like, oh, I'm better than you.
I just love that little bit. I think it's so good. It's so them. We've now settled into our characters. We're getting going.
I also do like that this episode emphasizes the fact that it's important, like the problems that can arise from being too sheltered, like sheltering your children too much and not letting them be their own person and like giving them the freedom to make choices or grow or whatever, and like how that just will instantly backfire on you. Toph is the representation of that, obviously. And so I think that's a very important point that they bring up here, which I think is good.
It is. I think it's very beautiful. And we will talk about this in our next segment. We're going to dive deeper into that. So when we come back, we're going to dive more into the episode and how it contributes to the overall narrative of the series. We will be right back.
Hey, Aspect listener, I'm Robbie.
And I'm Alex, enjoying the show here on the Aspect Network.
Then check out Framing the Force.
We are your one-stop shop for all things in a galaxy far, far away. Each week, we discuss everything from the latest news and releases to the hottest topics in the fandom.
Beyond the films and series, we share our thoughts on every corner of the Star Wars universe, from comics to video games to collectibles and everything in between.
Join us every week as we discuss one of the greatest franchises in film history here on the Aspect Network.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Bending the Narrative. Before the break, we broke down the episode The Blind Bandit. Now we're discussing how this episode contributes to the overall series and story in the world of Avatar. Kate, let's start with you. How does this episode play into the larger story?
Well, the obvious answer, Toph.
I was about to say, I was going to be like, introduce us
We got
Toph.
This is her character study.
Yeah.
Which I love. They also do such a great thing with this show. This is a great example of them introducing characters. Like we've introduced so many characters, first of all, in this season. We get May, Ty Lee, Azula. We get to learn more about the Fire Lord. So on and so on. But this is really Toph's character study. This whole episode is focused around her. We get a lot of great themes with this. Again, parents. This is the only characters with last names, like a family.
Yeah. Because not even...
Which I find very interesting and important.
Because we don't even... Zuko doesn't even... We don't even know their last... Their last name isn't mentioned in this, and they're the Fire Lords.
They're just Zuko Fire Nation. I don't know.
Yeah. Like, no one has last names.
Fire.
And Sokka don't have last names. Like, there's no... It's so interesting, honestly, that they were like, oh, yeah, it's the Beifongs. And also, it's weird that you don't think about it really until you like stop to think about it, and you're like, wait a second.
I never thought about it until I saw something on Instagram or some post on Tumblr like years ago where they were like, they're the only family with last names. I was like, they are.
Yeah, they're just a whole like dynasty, which is super. I would love to know the conversations that went into like making that decision, like where they were like, oh yeah, these people have last names though. Like I
wonder if they were like, it works for the story, and they're like, would it be funny if this is the only people with it? Should we just do these people? Like, I feel like that was a discussion in the writing room.
Yeah, because literally no one else ever has their last names mentioned. Kyoshi doesn't have a last name. No. Roku doesn't have a last name. Karuk doesn't have one. I don't think anyone
because
else...
it's important because her story is really about, or a big motivator for her, I guess, is family.
Yeah, it's that like, I mean, it's
her origin, I guess.
Yeah, it's the like nepotism part of it too, and the fact that like she comes from royalty, and it's like, oh, you have everything, but like that's not what she wants. She doesn't want the silver spoon and all that stuff. Like she wants to go out and live,
and roll in the dirt, and
it's so
literally.
Like just the Beifongs. I literally can't think of anyone. There's got to be at least one.
No, there's literally no one else.
No one else in the entire...
Which I love. And I think that too solidifies like, oh, they are...
important. They're like key...
Important, rich.
Figures in
that helps them along the way. I mean, we see it later on in seasons that her status does help them along the way. And she just used it. But I do love also she's supposed to be, you know, the rich little valley girl, the little sweet lady of the house. And
so there's one other example.
No. What?
I knew there was at least one more, and it doesn't happen until Korra. Asami has a last name. Asami Saito.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, but and that's again because it's playing into the whole like family and like a business and a dynasty and like that kind of thing. But like
only rich people have last names, guys.
It's like I don't. Yeah, but no one else like Korra, Tonrak, like no one else has last names. I feel like
that's a big thing when you become notable in society or super rich. Your last name is kind of becomes important about that, but it's not with the royal family. But I guess they're just.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm trying to think of a way in the story that you can write, like, because I don't see a way that they can show that in the story without having her last name be a part of it.
I think it's
anybody that I know in any story where it's the rich girl, it's like, oh, your family.
Mm-hmm.
I also think the rich family.
I think that a part of it is that we're seeing because of the time period that the show takes place in and how it is not emphasizing, but like drawing upon the like way older history, like that kind of like set, like not like post or pre, like even medieval age type stuff. Like at that time and in a lot of cultures there, it would be your name plus wherever you're from. And like we do get that with characters where it's like Sokka of the Southern Water Tribe, right? Or things like that. And so it's just, I guess it's just the fact that like in the world, most people genuinely didn't have last names yet. And they just like start cropping up when, I guess if you get to the certain height where like the Beifongs are like, yeah, we got a last name now. We're the shit.
We got a last name.
Like we rule people. And
I guess too, for the modern audience, it kind of relates to like, oh, you're a Vanderbilt or a Rockefeller.
Right. Yeah.
They're
It's like
Beifong.
Like that type of thing. It is so interesting though that literally like there's just 2 examples in the whole thing of people having last name.
And I like that there's only one in each series.
Yeah, they gave it to one group.
They only get there's one. They have one last name card, and they can only use it once.
It's
so
also,
I wonder if in this new Avatar series that they're making,
we're gonna get another new last name card. But see, because we also don't know. This is a total future casting thing. So we don't know how far into the future they're going with that, and so like there might be even more last names that pop up there because like it'll become a more prevalent thing in the culture as like it gets more modern and things like that. That's a different conversation, but
we will get there.
Yeah.
But anyways, the narrative of the story and Toph Beifong, more things that we learned in this episode. I was talking about, we get that theme of family and leaving your family and being coddled. And I think that's very interesting to show to kids that these parents can overprotect you and ruin you. And I think it's interesting. I think a lot of parents would see this and be like, oh my God, no, that's going to give my kid the idea to run away and do their own thing. And but
it's again taking the wrong lesson. It's like you can't think about it from your perspective as a parent. You have to think about it from the perspective of the kid and like how they will then view that situation, and like understanding that part of being a good parent in that instance is letting them have some space and be their own person and not just being like, I can't.
Letting them be themselves.
Like you can't be a helicopter parent all the time, even if you're the richest people on the entire world, because you are the only ones with last names.
I want to be so rich that I'm the only one in the world with the last name.
Right. Like that is the ultimate brag, honestly. Just like, I have a last name, and everyone else is like, what? Like, what do you mean? What is that? Like I
feel like that's people who are like, oh, Reginald the Third. If you have a number in your name.
Remember. The number thing is so interesting.
I feel like that's a flex. Like,
this episode though, in the larger thing, like it gives us our guiding point for the rest of this book, for the rest of this season. It's we now have the earthbending teacher. Yeah, like we have the earthbending teacher that Aang needs to continue his journey of mastering the elements. He's got water and air down, and so now he's moving on to earth. And we can actually like really kick into gear. It's honestly kind of wild if you like when you put it in those terms and look at it from that lens, as like the first 5 episodes of this book are like almost a prologue or like just a little like the season really begins here,
right now.
Kind of like this is when we now have our for sure a visible like goal and path. Like before this is just kind of vague, like we were talking about, like they're just kind of going around and having adventures and
like picking up character traits, picking up lessons.
Yeah,
and now
it's
we're
like
really
it's spending the time with them, and also like you were saying earlier, like bringing more characters into the fold and like setting the pieces and stuff. But now it's like, okay, this is the for sure path that we're going on, which is super important. I also think to your point about the parents thing, this episode and then next week's episode are 2 really big contrasts in seeing how the parenting styles work. And I think that was definitely a very deliberate thing where they were like, hey, we're going to show
these
you this
episodes back to back.
Yeah, like where these parents are like super quote unquote nice, like they would say they're being the best parents they could possibly be. They're providing everything they possibly can for their daughter. They're making sure she's protected and safe and all of these things. And that's not actually the best thing for her. And then next week we get the flip of that where Ozai's just a giant piece of shit. But like
just shit. Just a piece of shit.
It's just that like we'll talk about it more next week.
Doesn't even try.
He just sucks.
Just straight up
but like I think that's definitely a very intentional thing that they do, and that also then sets up the other half of the big kind of arc for Zuko and how that goes in through the story and how that story progresses through the rest of the book in this season. But yeah, it's
like
super.
This episode and the next episode are very much solidify that.
Yeah, they
the path we're going on.
They really chart out exactly what the characters need to do, and also again, like with this episode, it's so clearly, which the show is just so good at establishing the character traits and personalities immediately, but you so instantly know who Toph is as a character. She's got, I mean, she I'm sure has the most screen time in this episode, probably. I mean, I guess tied with Aang, if you had to break it down. Yeah. But like, even still, not a lot of time with her. Like it's a 20-minute episode, but you get everything you need to know about her. And
we learn her personality, her backstory, her fighting style. We see her in action. We get so much information about her. I also love too, like we see already how her fighting style is so different from other fighters. She's very stiff, and the way she moves is nothing we've seen in the show. Like I have not seen anybody move like that in the show, even other Earthbenders.
It's very intentional. It's super, like she doesn't just move randomly ever, and it's again because it like wraps back into her waiting and listening and being more reactive to, like, she's so intentional in her reactions to everyone and understands how important that is. I think it's also a big point in this episode to not let your like bias cloud your judgment about people. And that even goes into the like Aang realizing that she is the earthbending teacher, and the fact that like in his vision he just sees her as this like little girl in a dress who's like, you know,
with the flying pig,
like
flying boar,
who is, you know, whatever, and probably want to think much like there's no, I think we mentioned this in the episode, like there's no way that you look at her in that vision and are like, that's the earthbending master that Aang is going to learn from. Like that's just not,
like you're like, who is that?
Which is totally, again, intentional, but it's like you purposefully are not getting that impression from her to start. And so it's about understanding that there's more to everyone than that, and that there's more to them than those first impressions, and to like not let that cloud your judgment on who the person will be or what they're capable of. And that again also wraps back into like her disability and being like, well, just because she's disabled doesn't mean she can't do anything or she can't be the earthbending master, or, you know, etc. Like all of those things. She very much can do that and is that, and it's exactly what Aang needs in this.
And it almost makes her better than everybody else because she had to do that.
Yeah, because it just gives her such a unique perspective on all of that, and it's so strong.
It's so strong. I do love too. There's like that bit when she's talking to Aang. She's like, "I see that over there, those trees, even those ants over there." He's like,
and it cuts to like that. The ants. It was so good.
It's so sick.
Yeah,
but then and then they immediately get ambushed, but she sees it coming.
Right. Yeah. It's so funny also that what you get, and this is more like future casting stuff, honestly, the fact that they could put in the metal cages to like, which like we've seen them before because that's how they trapped Boomy. And we even get hits of the fact that the metal cages aren't enough to stop a sufficiently advanced earthbender, because Boomy's like, I can still earthbend in this shit. Like
he's fine. Like, I can see.
Yeah, he's like, I can see, which also, oh, that's so good. I just even thought, because like Toph can't even see normally, but she still manages to get out of there, like because she's just still on another, because she just invents metal bending because she's just on that level. But I do
she's like fuck it, nothing stands in my way.
It's again, the show is just so good at placing things, at like planting the seeds early enough and like putting these recurring either items or there's one thing where the cages aren't necessarily this thing, but there's a storytelling term called like objects of power, or like different things like that, where it's like a thing or a prop or whatever that you see that will then have an emotional attachment to it. Like, I don't know if you've seen The Last of Us or played the game. I'm pretty sure you haven't played the game. But
I haven't played the game. I've seen the show. Love the show.
So the watch that Joel gets from his daughter, right, as like a birthday present from his daughter, like that's an object of power that's now imbued with emotion. So like every time that Joel glances down at that watch in the future, you get the emotional like impact that comes with it.
Necklace.
Yeah, like it's these things where like you're able to imbue them with that emotion or that narrative whatever, and it's just shorthand for the audience, where like you then see this thing and you're able to like recognize it, and it's just getting information, like so much more information than you could possibly say in words to the audience immediately. And this show does that so much with objects and characters, and just like establishing them in the world earlier on, so that whenever something different or something new happens with them later, it's not just like out of nowhere. It's
out of nowhere. It's like, connected. It makes sense.
Yeah, it's like you've seen it already, but and you're
just
more
watching this show, you can learn how to become a great writer.
Right? Yeah, it really, like, they use all of the tricks. All like tricks in the like positive, like the
positive,
not like tricks.
They use it all in the right way.
Not derogatory. I don't know what the opposite, because you know how like you say things and then like in parentheses derogatory. I don't know what the opposite, like in parentheses compliment. Like
compliment.
They use all the tricks. Compliment. Yeah, they do a fantastic job of that with just everything. So again, it's just like putting the cages there, and like, oh, she's trapped in that for now, but like the next time she gets trapped in them, like she'll get. Yeah, I mean, she even gets out of it.
Yeah. I love too how the dad is like, she's a frail little girl. And then it cuts to her in the cage and she's like, come and fight me yourself. Like she's just talking shit to them.
Yeah,
but she's so little, it's just like her eye.
It's so funny. She's like, fight me yourself. Like, I don't remember exactly what she says, but yeah,
fight me yourself. Get me out of here.
She is not having any of it. She's like, you guys are cowards. I would wipe the floor with all of you. And she does. She just absolutely wrecks all of them. Like it's not.
And I love too, we already get her like iconic point. Like she stands kind of to the side and she points because she doesn't need to look at people.
Also, what a character reveal of her with like the title belt and like the shot of her like holding up the title and like the way the camera pans down. She's this small little girl, but they make her larger than life in that shot. Yes. And it's awesome. It's so good.
Oh, I love that you pointed that out. That's so true, that the way they show her, just even with camera angles in these shots, you're right. They do kind of always are down because she is larger than life. She's as small as she is the biggest character.
They go on both ends of the spectrum there, where they really like lean into her being the small little girl in the moments where you're trying to get that like funny contrast of like, oh, it's just a small little girl, and they're like making either a visual gag or like as she's talking all this shit and like you can barely see her, right? It's like they'll use those tricks to like make her and emphasize and highlight the fact that she is just a small like person, but then at the same time, whenever they're needing to show that she is like the most powerful person in the room, like they will use those camera angles and that kind of perspective and those kinds of things to frame her as the most powerful person in the room, and like she's larger than everyone. And so like they really again just like use all of the tricks in the right ways and at the right times to like, they just know when to hit the right emotional beats. It's insane.
They just know. They just know. It's that thing again at the beginning where I was like, it's just good. It's just so good.
Like you could talk about it in so many different ways and in so much detail, but it really just all boils down to like, they're pretty good at making this show. I think they kind of knew what they were doing.
They're good at making this show. If you didn't know by now.
Yeah.
And I think too, this is such a good turning point from, not to say that this show was like, oh, it's a cute show, it's a good show. To like this episode and also the next episode. I think these are the two episodes that really get us to be like, oh, this show's amazing. This show is, I don't know what to say. I don't want to say it's adult. Like it's almost like, oh, this isn't just a kid's show. Like it could be a kid's show and really good. And I feel like we've had that. And they're like, it's a good, fun show.
Yeah.
But these next two episodes are like, oh, this is on a deeper level.
It's that thing. This is I think a conversation that happens a lot still, even now with animation. It happens always with animation and like nothing else, but like people, it's not that it's not made for kids, because it is, but it's about not necessarily treating your audience like they're kids. And like talking down to them and like presenting it down to like, it's just like, yeah, it's made to be able to be friendly for kids, obviously, but it's not like, you're not going for the lowest common denominator, if that makes sense. Like it's a very much like, I don't know, like it's just a good show. Like
they just had the opportunity to make a good show, and it just so happens to be on a kids network.
Yeah. It happens to be like,
I think like that. What is it? Like when people think of animation, they think, oh, it's for kids.
For kids, yeah.
Oh, this is so good. Let's make it in a live action, because then it would be real.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, like this is real. This is actually, take it as it is. It is. I hate to say like, oh, it's not just a kid show. But even just saying,
because then
just
it's on
because
like
it's a
the
kid show, does that make it bad?
yeah, it's the weird thing of it's like, oh, because then you feel like you are like contributing to the thing that you're arguing against in the way where you're like, because then it
Yes.
feels dismissive of like if it was just, it's such a weird, I don't know how to articulate it really, but like,
And I love that the show does that makes this argument very active. I feel this is one of the biggest shows that does that. Maybe
yeah,
one of the first. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other shows that were seen as kid shows, but were
Batman
this
the Animated
profound.
Series.
I've
said Batman the Animated Series. Yeah, I feel
like that's a big thing with anime as well. And
yeah,
that's what they pull all of their inspiration from is classic anime.
I mean, it's just understanding that like kids are intelligent and capable of also approaching the like themes and ideas that generally are considered like quote unquote adult, or like that you need to be in, not necessarily live action, but like it needs a like mature rating, and like we need blood and gore
it
and
has to be Game of Thrones in order to be
and
good.
like and that's just not true. Like you can do things within like a PG confine or whatever and still tell the same stories with the same level of depth and like integrity.
Still
doesn't
have
necessarily
to be taken as seriously.
like you just get good story out of it. Like that's the most important part, is just making sure that the story is good. Like you shouldn't be trying to be like, oh, I'm making this for, not to say that you shouldn't understand and like know the audience that you're making it for, but not like pandering to people, or I don't know. It's a weird thing to articulate, of being like, well, it's not just a kids show, because then you're like, oh, but that then implies that a kids show is lesser than, which is not the case. It's such a weird
just like
thing.
the level of, like I said, like the level of seriousness it's taken to. Like an American or Western audience won't see it as holding the same weight as something as live action, which is so unfortunate.
Yeah, it's just approaching it with a level of respect and sincerity, I think, is the main thing. Like it's if you can do that, then you'll make it, well, it'll be good.
It'll be good. And I think of like some modern shows, like I know that's a big problem now with a lot of parents that I've heard are talking about. They're having a lot of issues with kid shows nowadays, that a lot of them aren't doing that. A lot of them are treating their audience as if they're children and for babies and and not actually just making real stories to tell.
It'll be like a lot of kind of like dumbed down, super like fast, just like vapid and kind of hollow. Like it's not
Melon.
Like there's not any substance there, which is like,
I know one show people say is good. This is funny, but like Bluey. I heard Bluey is really good.
I've seen a couple of episodes of Bluey, and Bluey is really good. Bluey slaps. It's
great. I love that. I think we need
Bluey
more shows
podcast
like
launching next
Bluey
year.
podcast is next. We're gonna go into detail about each episode.
No, Bluey's good. Also, so is We Bear Bears. I don't know if you've seen that one, but
is that the Three Bears?
Yes.
Oh my god, it looks so cute. I have not seen it. It looks adorable.
It's great.
Yeah, loving good kid shows. Toph Beifong, badass bitch, love her.
Has a last name.
Has a last name. We get again this show, amazing female characters. This is the largest list of most amazing, like well done female characters that I've seen, and they're not just done to be like, oh, let's make her girls so we could be woke. Like
they're like not just
like that.
They're not just trying to check boxes. They're like, no, let's make compelling characters, and also it's important to have women in there, like,
and also have a disability. Like they don't just give her disability to be like, oh, let's have a character with a disability. They're like, they generally
they care about it.
They care about it. It's not just something thrown in to be like to check a box, like you said.
Yeah,
it's done in such a right way, and it just shows that you can do it in an awesome, cool way that makes sense for your story.
Yeah, it's again just treating it with
powerful bitch.
That like respect. Yeah, and they make her the best earthbender of all time. Come on,
so good.
It's incredible.
She's blind, but she sees better than anybody else in the entire show. That's the coolest thing.
And also, I mean, like, yeah, with her, and then even Katara, because I know there's arguments that I know the fandom has a lot of arguments about whether or not she's the like best airbender or most powerful, or not airbender, waterbender, like the most powerful waterbender of all time. Which, like, there's definitely an argument to be made there that she's the
bloodbender.
Yeah, like, so, you know, they introduced and again, Azula's a prodigy. Like all of the female characters they introduced, they're the best of whatever thing
of
they're
that
doing.
group.
Yeah,
and I think that's just such a smart addition. I think that's such a
cool.
great way to add that in. And again, in a kid's show, not to say it like that, but
yeah,
that's amazing. You don't
but
see that.
It's important. Yeah.
It formed who I am now. All right. Anything else you would love to put in about this show? Any other last minute tidbits? Oh,
you have one?
I didn't say this. I did say that they won an Annie Award. They did. They won an Annie Award for this episode for character animation in a television production.
Nice.
Because I think it's the animation of that fight scene.
Yeah, I mean,
like
I said earlier, they knew they were cooking. Like they
were in that kitchen making a Michelin star meal.
Yeah, they knew they had something there, and good for them for winning for that, because that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think I had any other points besides that. Just it's pretty good.
Guys, this show is good.
I
don't know that we have to make a whole podcast explaining to you why, but yes, it is.
It's good.
That's good. All right. So thank you guys for tuning in to Bending the Narrative. Next week, we are spending a lot of quality time with my favorite character, Zuko, in Zuko Alone. Best episode ever. We'll get there. But first, Alex, where can people find you online?
You can find me online at the Alex Batts. It's BATTS on both Instagram and Twitter. And
you can find me online at Kate the Official on Instagram.
Awesome. Next week is about to be your Kyoshi episode, essentially.
I'm going to fangirl the whole time. I'm so excited. This is my avatar day.
So yeah, please be sure to subscribe here to The Aspect on YouTube and any platform where podcasts can be found. Please give us a like, leave a comment, turn on the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And you can also follow us on Twitter /X, Instagram, and TikTok at The Aspect Co. A huge thank you to Peter Fraser for providing our series music. Thank you so much for listening.
And Flamio Hotman.
Hey, thank you for tuning in.
If you enjoyed this show, then be sure to subscribe here to The Aspect so you never miss an episode.
And be sure to check out some of our other shows and videos on the Aspect Network.
Thank you so much for listening, and Flamio Hotman.